Hello. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Gurdjieff's book, the chapter on Babylon. And I will say a lot of negative things about Maurice Nicoll. But let me start with asking the question, is it really possible to help somebody? I had this image, and it is an imperfect one, of an apple tree and a parent who lifts the child up to reach an apple every time the boy wants one. Is that helping? Does that help? Or does it actually remove the apples from the lower branches so that when the boy actually reaches for himself, they're all gone? And in the region where the boy could learn, it's all been used to amuse the parents, and the only apples left are so high that the boy can't reach them. Isn't that how it is? How can you help somebody, actually, when the whole point of a life is to become capable yourself, to do it yourself, to become the soul that you are meant to be? Here in the UK, they have millions of charities. Soon they'll have one charity per person. And meanwhile, these English are being replaced at such a rate that they will not even exist in 20 or 30 years. Isn't it their own desperation that they're feeling? I was watching an old episode of Sherlock Holmes, how things used to be in England. Sherlock Holmes is sitting quietly in a study and being served by his housekeeper from the lower classes. He knows his role and she knows her role. Two classes, each doing a different job, each respected, and each having their own domain, their own rhythm of life, their own way of living and dying, each serving the other in a stratified line, array of creation that was English culture at that time. 20 or 30 years ago, all the insane people were taken out of the insane asylums, and now they walk up and down the streets of all the roads in the country. I hear them often around here, coming out of their halfway homes, screaming, and there is so much noise and so many strangers speaking so many different languages, and the only thing that will remain is the fake smiles of American advertising. The ray of creation has been destroyed. Now let's have a look at Maurice Nicoll. In an article that he wrote in 1946, he talks about the parable of walking on the waters. Here Nicoll uses his well-practiced recipe. The first part he talks about Gurdjieff's cosmology, and in the middle he switches to Jungian psychotherapy, supposedly. And at the end he starts talking about Christ, so he has a three-part recipe. And this is the way Nicoll does things. He sandwiches these three things together, and at the end he talks about Christ, 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 Christ. He must have learnt this technique from his father, who was in some Christian sect. Of course, he would never be Catholic. He would never be the thing in itself. His father was in an offshoot sect and was a Bible basher and a journalist. This sandwich gives many false appearances to this theatre and to its devotees. And there are many such theatres in this world and are buried in the same hole. In this one, there is a quote from the Bible. When therefore they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they behold Jesus walking on the sea, and drawing nigh unto the boat, and they were afraid. But he saith unto them, It is I, be not afraid. And Nicoll helps to clarify anybody who might think that something special is going on. And he says, it's all nonsense, it's all just a story. Christ walking on the waters represents a state of being in which he could walk on all these stormy waters of his mind and not sink. That's what it means. And Nicoll helps us further by saying, suppose that you have to make some parables about self-remembering or false personality and so on. You would find yourself writing parables just as they are in the Gospel. Well, thanks, Nicoll, that's a great help. So it's all bullshit, is it? What can we say about Nicoll other than he's an asshole? I remember Gurdjieff saying, two kind of dog there is, you know. Dirty dog and dirty dog. You understand, Miss Gordon, what difference is? Dirty dog and dirty dog. And if you have an interest either in Gurdjieff's cosmology, in C.G. Jung, or in Christ, I would suggest you go straight to the horse's mouth. There certainly seems to be a need to do some psychological work, and I recommend to you these 3 books, which I have myself studied and which are full of practices. Nicoll himself is a master of degeneration, and he shows how knowledge of real things slowly becomes metaphorical, how knowledge itself is a kind of material. Gurdjieff says in chapter 24, everybody talks as if our learned know that half 100 is 50. There on your planet, the more of such information one of your favourites mechanically learns by rote, information he himself has never verified and which moreover he has never sensed, the more learned he is thought to be. Yes, Mr. Nicoll. And in terms of the degeneration of the fourth way groups, let me read something else from Gurdjieff. The neo-learned beings collected in this way there in the city of Babylon from almost the whole of the planet used often to meet together, and of course, as it is proper to the learned beings of the planet Earth, they began discussing amongst themselves questions which were either immeasurably beyond their comprehension, or about which they could never elucidate anything useful whatsoever, either for themselves or for ordinary beings there. Examples of this are when people try to self-remember or not be negative, both of which are impossible, and they are still trying 30 years later. They are impossible because they are the product of a huge amount of specific and deep inner work. But the teachers of the fourth way like to begin with the result because they know it is impossible, so you have got a captive crowd that's never going anywhere. You see how things work. Another favourite of mine is the idea that you can verify and validate everything at the beginning and before you start, mind. Before you start, you have to verify and validate the entire system. Do you see how it works with these fucking people? I'm going to read some sections from chapter 24. The first fact is this, that from almost the time of the sinking of the continent of Atlantis, a particular essence property began gradually to be crystallized, and during the later centuries became already finally crystallized in the presence of every one of your favorites there, thanks to which that being sensation which is called happiness for one's being, which is experienced from time to time by every three-brained being, from the satisfaction of his inner self-respect, appears in the presence of your favorites exclusively only when they acquire for their own possession a great deal of a particular metal, there called gold. And at the same time it is the established custom there never to consider what kind of being manifestation one made to become the owner of a great quantity of this metal. Well, this makes me feel very sad because I'm just a poor soul living on this planet, and all I have are my hands and my tears. I'm just trying to be an honest man, and these people rush around lying to each other and fighting over money, and I just want to do a good job today. In another place, Gurdjieff says, when this Persian king had finally decided to get gold by alchemy, he for the first time with all his being realized that he as yet did not know that little secret, without which it was absolutely impossible to fulfill this wish of his. There are many people who are attracted to Gurdjieff's teaching, who are interested or who wish to teach you that little secret, fathom the gist. The only secret is that you have to stop living in a low way. You're trying to thieve your way to some secret. Later on it says, the burning question of the day consisted in this, that both the neo-learned and the ordinary beings of the city of Babylon were very anxious to know whether they had a soul. That friend of mine, Hamolinadir, was also very much excited about the said burning question. He said that those theories in which it was proved that we have a soul were very logically and convincingly expounded, and equally the theories in which quite the contrary was proved were expounded no less logically and convincingly. Now let me tell you that sometimes I'm taking a piss in the bathroom, and on the shelf in front of me is some moisturizing cream, and on the back of it is this long essay about what's in it and why it's good for you. Some people say that bananas are good for you because they're high in potassium. Isn't that what they say? I mean, isn't this whole planet so retarded it's hard to find words? You know, in the flowering of this civilization is when you go onto Google and you type in some question and you get 50 answers all completely opposite to each other. And the reason for that is because the law of three no longer flows through people. So their understanding of life is as fragmented as they are. They speak what they are. Until you make something happen inside of you, you're not going to see anything happen outside of there. And it's like the light has become diffused inside you and you slowly die. In Western culture, since the world wars, has decayed until today, where we have something called evidence-based science, which means that instead of a stratified line of experts teaching each other in a long line going back centuries, you have what is called evidence-based science, which means that nobody knows anything and they all just do what Chris Whitty says. Chris Whitty being a guy who's on the payroll of some big corporation. And that's it. It renders the entire scientific community complete morons. A ray of creation is like a series of waterfalls where at each step knowledge is held. And so the entire thing becomes an illuminated river. And each person in that line holds knowledge. The path is a long, arduous climb, always towards the source, always repairing what is broken, always hoping, always struggling, and one foot in front of the other.